Yeah, dude, I paid so much money for this thing, and it is not accurate. At 500 yards, groups are all over the place.
I mean, what kind of ammo are you using it?
55 grain.
I think this might be 1 in 7. Then.
So?
Well, you're using the wrong ammo. Let's talk about it. Why you might be using the wrong ammo in your rifle. Hi everybody, welcome back to Classic Firearms. I'm Matt, and today we've got Jason.
What's going on, folks?
And Kaya.
What's up, guys?
And we're going to talk about something to help you get the most out of your shooting experience when it comes to shooting your rifles, some of your handguns. But it is that you may be using the wrong ammunition.
You mean I can't just use 55 grain and just call it a day?
I mean, you could, but you're not going to get the best performance out of your rifle.
All right.
And by the wrong ammunition, I don't mean the wrong caliber. Obviously, that's an important consideration. But in this case, we're talking about the weight of the bullet versus the twist rate of your rifle and how these things interact with each other.
Wait, I can't hit 1,000 yards with my 55 grain 5.56 with my 10-inch rifle?
I mean, every clock's wrong twice.
I do it all the time.
I mean, I wouldn't recommend trying.
I do it all the time. I'm sure in the comment section there are some people who do it too.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you, in order to make that a more effective shot,
I see.
what we want to do is we want to match the appropriate bullet weight with the appropriate twist rating on your rifle. So when you look at your rifle, it's usually marked on the barrel somewhere that there will be a twist rate. And this is measured, I don't think that's going to pick up, but like right here, it's got a little 1 in 12. And it's represented as a ratio. So what that means is it makes one complete rotation in 12 inches of travel. So the larger the number, the slower the twist rate is. So if you think about it, like if this has a 1 in 12 twist rate, the bullet makes one rotation in 12 inches. This one has a 1 in 7 twist rate. So because that number is smaller, it's making one complete rotation in 7 inches of travel. It is turning faster. And that's important because bullets have to spin at different rates in order to properly stabilize the weight of that projectile.
Makes sense.
So what does that mean? This is a 5.56 gun. This is a 5.56 gun. What is that, a 20-inch barrel or 18-inch, right? Somewhere around there.
I believe this is 20, yes.
20, right? And we got, what, 16-inch right here? So if I shoot a 55 grain with a 16-inch versus 20-inch, what kind of difference am I going to get?
So it goes to that stabilization idea, right? So as the bullet exits the barrel, it is spinning due to the effect of the rifling. And if you ever think about someone who's throwing a football, right? So as they release the football, there might be some wobble, but due to the spinning of the spiral of the football, it trues itself up and it flies in a more predictable, accurate trajectory. And so that's what we want for the bullets that we're shooting as well. We want the bullet's path through the air to stabilize so that we have the most accurate, predictable trajectory that we can so that we can predictably hit that target. We know that if we're doing our part, the bullet's going to do its part.
Makes sense.
Now, where this kind of intersects with your ammunition is that you have to spin a bullet faster or slower depending on its weight, its length. And when I say length, I mean length in comparison to the diameter of the bullet. And also, in some regards, its shape. So as a great example, we're kind of looking at these 3 ARs here. So we have a 1 in 12 twist rate, a 1 in 8 twist rate, and a 1 in 7 twist rate. Most ARs you buy on the current market in the kind of 16-inch barrel configuration are gonna have 1 of 3, although really more 1 of 2. So you have 1 in 9, 1 in 8, and 1 in 7. So the military uses 1 in 7, I'd say that's probably the most popular. 1 in 8 is a little bit slower than that, and then 1 in 9 is a little bit slower than that. Now, if you think there's kind of a big jump when you get to the 1 in 12, keep in mind that the M16 was originally developed with a 1 in 14-inch twist for that 55 grain projectile we used at its adoption. We quickly switched to the 1 in 12, and twist rates have gotten faster in ARs kind of ever since.
Why did we switch? I know you're going to show that. Why did we switch quickly, as you said? Was it just not accurate? Like, did we have accuracy problems?
So I wouldn't say that it's accuracy problems. The original testing of the M16 showed it to be an accurate platform, but especially when you're dealing with the kind of environments that we were shooting in Vietnam, we wanted to change to a faster twist rate to better stabilize it when you have to deal with things like vegetation and other possibilities of deflection. So the 1 in 12 really seemed to be kind of an upgrade. And as we've continued down the path of developing the AR platform, we've gotten to heavier projectiles, which have led us to increase the speed at which we want the bullet to spin.
Makes sense.
So as a great example, just for visualizing, so this is the projectile from a 55 grain 5.56 bullet. And this is the projectile from a 77 grain 5.56 bullet. Now, I'm gonna lay them on my hand so that my fingers aren't in any way kind of blocking them. You can see how much longer the 77 grain bullet is, which makes sense if you think about it.
Yeah.
You know, if they're the same diameter, how can we add weight? We make it longer,
yeah.
right? So when bullets are heavier or longer, they have to spin faster to stabilize. So when we had a 55 grain projectile, 1 in 12 was a good twist rate. Now that we may be shooting 62 or 77 grain projectiles, we need a faster twist rate.
So what does the military use when it comes to grain weight?
So their standard issue is 62 grain,
Okay.
but they also do use some projectiles up to 77 grain.
All right, so it makes sense to have them 1 to 7, right?
Yeah, the 1 in 7 standard issue.
Faster. The lower the number, the faster the bullet spins.
That's correct, yeah. Now, when you ask, okay, so why are there different options? Well, because people use different types of ammunition, and we use the firearms for different purposes. If you're trying to shoot 55 grain,
Right.
you know, it's a cheap or more plentiful ammunition for you to find, then you would want to use something that's got a slower twist rate, where you might find somebody using a rifle in 1 in 8 or 1 in 9. Or even these kind of old school guns that have even slower twist rates.
Right.
If you are going to shoot something that's super long distance though, and you're wanting to shoot a heavier projectile so that there's better terminal ballistics on the end, then you're going to need to use a faster twist rate.
Makes sense.
So if I shot at 77 grain, because I can easily shoot that through that M16, right?
Sure.
That would basically not stabilize it.
Well, so in that case, so that's where we get into if you're spinning the bullet too slow, you have understabilized it. The bullet will never stabilize in flight, in which case it'll kind of keep yawing and things.
Right.
Yaw is when it kind of cants itself in the air. And so that's where you kind of can end up with things like keyholing and stuff. If you overstabilize, if you're spinning a bullet too fast for its weight, then you're going to end up with the bullet actually kind of wanting to pull itself around. And so it will
Like a
pull itself.
orbit, right?
Right.
Kind of. Yeah.
So you will actually end up with a bullet that pulls itself off of trajectory. And so you might see that your groups open up a lot because it's going basically where you're aiming, but as it's making that kind of spiral path, it might end up here or here instead of right where you're
Dude, it's crazy. People, and myself included, I've done that before too. Almost always, let's just say always blame the gun, right? They grab, let's say this M16, and they shoot a 77 grain at, I don't know, 500 yards, right? And they're not hitting the target. Their grouping is really off. They're like, man, this is an inaccurate gun. This gun sucks. So choosing your ammunition the right way, man, it's so freaking crucial. And I'm loving these information that you're giving us.
Now, keep in mind that range is going to have a determining factor because obviously if there's a small difference, it magnifies itself over time and distance. So if you're shooting only targets within 100 yards, you're probably not going to notice much of a difference. But once you get out to 200 or 300 yards, you're really going to start seeing those differences where the weight of the ammunition is going to need to match the rifle that you're using.
Makes sense.
So one thing I wanted to cover real quick, since I'm kind of wanting to focus on these AR-15s, is what ammunition is appropriate for different twist rates. So like the 1 in 7. While you can go down to a 55 grain, at that point you really are overstabilizing. So we probably want to bring that up closer to the 62 grain, and then almost the sky's the limit in normal 5.56 available weights.
Makes sense.
So you can go up to a 77 grain. There's like an 82 grain, and
90.
I think I've even
90
heard of
grain
seeing
on
90
there,
grain
yeah.
bullets. This will stabilize all of those heavier bullets. The 1 in 8's a kind of great compromise rifle twist because it will basically stabilize all of the commonly available weights pretty well, from 55 grain all the way up to the 77 grain. Now, you're still going to kind of lose performance at the very high end and the very low end. So, like an 80 grain projectile, probably not so good. A 40 grain projectile, not so good. But all of the most common available bullet weights for 5.56 are going to be kind of caught in there. When you go to a 1 in 9, you're really limiting yourself to a little bit less, lighter weight bullets. So it does well with those very lightweight, like 40 grain bullets.
Makes sense.
But on the other hand, you're losing the higher end. So I would say probably 62 grain would be the highest, and really I think it stops stabilizing around 60 grain. So, that's just one of those things to keep in mind. What is your intended purpose? What ammunition do you envision yourself using? And then maybe make sure that you're selecting a rifle that's appropriate. Conversely, if you've already bought your rifle, then you need to make sure that you're using ammunition that's appropriate to that rifle.
Okay.
So I got a question about the 1 in 7. There are a lot of folks out there who's got the 1 in 7, 1 in 8, right? These are very, very common. And obviously 55 grain is also extremely common, cheaper, and you want to go out there and practice. And you said obviously you could see the differences up to 2, 3, and 100 yards and beyond. But what if somebody who wants to go out there and 50, 100 yard, kind of have target shooting, training a little bit? What do you think about 55 grain there? Because it's going to be overstabilizing it.
Sure. So one thing to make absolutely clear is that if you're using the appropriate caliber, regardless of bullet weight, it is safe in the rifle. The rifle's chambered for that caliber. We don't have any concerns about safety. The question is of performance. And if you're at 100 yards or less, I don't know that you're going to see a noticeable enough difference, even with the fast twist rate, to say you couldn't just go out and shoot your rifle.
And train, right?
And train.
Okay, good.
But keep in mind that your results may be negatively impacted, right? So if you're shooting 55 grain out of the 1 and 7 at 100 yards, you're just not giving the projectile the best chance to be the most accurate shot.
Gotcha.
But at that small distance, at a relatively short distance, I don't think you're going to harm yourself a lot. You know, when it comes to you should still hit your target.
Gotcha. So if you're out there, you've got a bunch of 55 grain in your hands, or you can get your hands on because it's cheaper, available, whatever. You can still train with your gun on a CQB application, close distance, whatever. But if you really want to test the gun, your abilities, obviously the gun's performance, then you really want to make sure that 1 to 7, obviously, 77 grain would be really good, or 62 to 77, and then you would really find the true capabilities of yourself in the rifle. But for training close distance, it'd be just fine.
Now,
55 grain.
We're going to let Jason handle the 300 blackout discussion, but real quick, as an illustration of those kind of 3 factors, the shape, length, and weight, I did want to throw out to you guys kind of an interesting extreme, right? So if we think about 50 caliber projectiles, a black powder musket that shoots a 50 caliber ball, which is a very short compared to its caliber, its diameter.
Oh, I see.
It has a twist rate of around 1 in 60, 1 in 70. So that is the same diameter as this projectile. But of course, this projectile is much longer.
Yeah.
It's also going to be heavier. You know, so if you use a conical shaped projectile in your black powder cartridge, it almost cuts that twist rate in half. We're down to like 125, 130.
Wow.
Now, if we look at what a Barrett M81 shoots out of 50 BMG, again, same caliber, we're down to 1 in 15. And that's due to even though it's the same caliber, it's got a much longer bullet and a heavier bullet. So really, you know, the shape, the length, and the weight all contribute to these things. The length is, I would say, mostly due to the fact that longer bullets have more engagement with the rifling, and so it helps to generate more length because it's a longer bullet. But so you need to have it kind of a faster spin on those longer projectiles. But yeah, so that's just kind of an extreme example, going from 1 in 60 or 70 all the way down to 1 in 15, even though they're the nominal caliber.
I know we were, and you're going to talk about this. You talked about the longer bullets. What was that, 8.6 that you were talking about?
Yep.
I think right here, there's these rounds I got to give you because you can talk about them, right? Something like this.
Yeah.
Because you said longer bullets and it's got to spin faster. I think this is the fastest spinning bullet I know.
Yeah, so 8.6 in conjunction is a 1 in 3 twist rate. So that is extremely impressive coming out of a 12-inch barrel.
Fix, right?
Yeah,
This
out
is
of a
it?
12-inch fix.
So think about it. Every 3 inches, it's one whole rotation.
One whole rotation. So they would have done 1 in 1, but
What?
yeah.
What?
They would have done 1 in 1, but they were noticing that there was a little bit over stabilization, and it would yaw after about maybe 500 yards. So that's just what it is. It would just be completely off course. So 1 in 3 is a sweet spot for that. So 8.6 Blackout is a 6.5 casing with a 338 projectile crammed inside. So if that makes your head spin, I don't know what does. It has the same terminal ballistics and energy on target at 1,000 yards as a 45 ACP shot point blank.
Dude, I don't understand this part. I know we're talking about the ammunition thing we're going to get to.
Yeah.
We're talking about subsonic.
Yep.
So under 1,100 feet per second or under, 1,000 yards, a giant round, 1 in 3 twist, still at 1,000 yards, a 45 caliber ACP point blank.
Point blank.
That's terminal ballistics. That's insane.
It's nuts. So it goes to show that rotational energy carries through, man. I mean, it really does. So moving on to that, from there, 300 Blackout, which is my favorite caliber in my 2 things. You've got a lovely, what's the projectile?
That's a 145 grain.
145 grain.
Supersonic, yeah.
Supersonic. And this is great. This is great for your supers. You can go hunting with this. You can do whatever. If you, hopefully, when you invest in 300 blackout, you're shooting it with a can, right? Because that's what it's mainly primarily for. But if you don't, it's okay. You can.
Otherwise, just buy 7.62 by 39.
We hear you, but we like to not wake the neighbors. So here you go. And then you also have this 200 grain S&B right here, this boat tail projectile. And this is all spun through a 1 in 5 twist.
You said boat tail. What does that mean, man?
So boat tail, obviously, you see the two projectiles that are shaped different. This one just kind of cuts off at the end, but this boat tail adds a little bit more to the actual projectile on the bottom to help increase stability as it's flowing through.
Kind of narrows down.
Narrows down, keeps that almost how Matt was talking about that, that football, how it's just from one end to the other. Obviously, you wouldn't have 2 points on a bullet, but I mean, maybe you could.
Almost do.
You almost do, but like there it is right there. But it helps stabilize also through that 1 in 5 twist. So they've come to find out that yes, you can put 300 blackout and 1 in 7, but that 1 in 5 actually helps stabilize all rounds through it, whether it be all the way down from 110 Barnes, which the TSX round was God's gift to this earth.
Like, what is this Honey Badger QSD?
Yep, Honey Badger SD.
Mm-hmm. What's the twist rate on this one?
1 in 5.
1 in 5, okay.
1 in 5, that's sweet spot. So
nice.
It can handle every bit of from 110 TSX all the way up to 235. So
235 grain?
235
All right, that's
grain.
200 grain.
Yep.
Look at the difference, how giant that is. 235 would be, holy crap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess if you went out and you bought an AR and you see it's in 1 in 8 or 1 in 7 or something that's a little bit slower, and you wonder why you're shooting supersonics just fine and subsonics maybe not so great. A little bit too slow. You need that faster twist.
You need that
faster
fast
twist.
rotational energy, man. That
I
fast
see.
twist.
That makes sense. All right, so I got a question based on Matt's explanation. The faster spin rate, when the bullet is bigger and longer, it needs a faster spin rate for stabilization, right? So this Honey Badger SD is 1 in 5. So it's got a pretty fast spin rate, and I got a longer bullet here versus a shorter bullet here. In flight, I'm assuming the longer guy would be more stable?
So yes, in theory, but due to the fact that it's subsonic, it's actually kind of the adverse effect. Due to the fact of you're not getting full powder burn, right? Everything's maxed out on a, you have ranges and how it is. What are you saying ranges? Parameters that you follow. So if that was a supersonic round carrying that one, yes, but I don't think it was designed for that due to the ogive of the round and the fact that 1 in 5 and 300 blackout is pretty much the fastest you can go before the round starts literally eating itself apart.
Gotcha.
So
that makes sense.
It's not like 1 in 3 with the 8.6.
So subsonic, okay, I get it.
So I mean, specifically 300 blackout, since we're talking about super versus sub, that's one of the things is that transition from subsonic to supersonic.
Transonic.
It's really like a whole different calculation.
Right.
You're right. It's going
It can be really hard to compare apples and oranges.
And a matter of fact, that's a thing too. You can shoot a supersonic round, and then provided that the yardage is there, it will go transonic and then turn into a supersonic subsonic round.
Oh, yeah.
So there's that factor.
You're right.
As well.
There's also that's great. I'm glad this came up because there's also that. Besides the bullet weight, the size, and the twist rate, there's also the atmospheric effects too. So that's another. Damn, there's so much stuff to learn. But okay.
Now with 30 caliber projectiles, we see a little bit more unification, right? So we have the SR25, and this is in 308. This one is in 1 in 10, as opposed to the SCAR, which is 1 in 12.
That's a big
Wait,
jump.
why? Because they're both 308.
Now they're both 308. Now you might ask yourself the question, well, Matt, I thought you just said there's more unification. So if we look across different platforms, we'll find that there's a lot of platforms that are in the 30 caliber. Nominal caliber that are kind of all around that 1 in 10.
Right.
So most AK-47s are in 1 in 10. The original M1 Garand was in 1 in 10, but some of them are a little different. So we have the SCAR and, for instance, the M14, which were in 1 in 12. So in that case, like again, 1 in 12 versus 1 in 10 isn't a huge difference. There's going to be a giant overlap in the amount of bullet weights, but obviously we do see that covers quite a bit of territory because 7.62 by 39, you're going to expect the most common kind of weight to be 123 grain versus 308. We're looking like 147 versus 30-06. We're up to like 174.
Right.
So we actually do have a couple 308 projectiles. But this might kind of demonstrate a little bit why you don't see as vast of a range of rifling twists, because these two are two different weighted projectiles, and really it's very hard to by the eye tell them apart.
So what's the grain weight on these things?
So this is a typical 147, and the one with the ballistic tip is 168.
Okay, so not too
Now,
much
there's
of a
not a
difference.
giant difference between those two, so you wouldn't expect to see a big difference. I do think there's a little bit different in the profile, where this one has a larger straight area before it starts becoming conical at the top.
True. Yeah.
But, again, so even though there is a large kind of range of bullet weights going from 122, 123 for 7.62 by 39 all the way up to like 174 and heavier for 30-06, you see that a lot of them have very similar twist rates. I think part of that is due to the effect of velocity. So if you push a bullet faster, so the bullet spinning is what gives it its stabilization, and the rifling reflects how long it takes to make a rotation. Theoretically, if it's going at a faster velocity, it's covering that distance faster.
Okay.
And so I think that, in certain cases, you can kind of, I'll say, push your rifling a little bit, where you can get something to stabilize that may be a little bit heavier than what your rifling would normally call for, which I think is one of the reasons why we can get kind of some of those heavier bullets to still stabilize with a very similar twist rate, is that 30-06 is going faster.
That makes sense.
But, so it is interesting, though, because there are times in which I find things like super interesting. I'm just not skilled enough at understanding the ballistic science of it. When you say, okay, well, this is a 1 in 12, but then this is 1 in 12, and obviously this shoots a much lighter bullet than this does. Well, it's because there's so many factors involved, right?
Yeah.
So I can't claim to be an expert at every factor that's going to be involved in it. But so, again, the point that I want to come back to is that depending on your rifle, you may be best served by examining your ammunition more closely. I understand that everybody's wallet hurts, and sometimes you're looking for what's cheap and available, and that's okay for some practice.
Yeah.
But if you want to get the most performance out of your rifle, you really probably do want to consider what your twist rate is to see what kind of ammunition best suits your purpose.
So in a nutshell, people who are watching this video, to sum it up, how should they pick the right ammunition? Like if you got a shorter twist rate or faster, like a 1 in 7, obviously 1 in 5, 1 in 7, 1 in 8, you use a little heavier projectile.
Right.
If you got a longer twist rate, then you use lighter projectile.
That's right.
So that's the rule of thumb. Would you say that?
Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty good. I mean, because literally there are probably folks out there, and I didn't know this stuff. I'm learning it at Classic, but I didn't know this stuff when I was, working at other jobs. I would probably grab a 1 in 7 and shoot 55 grain and try to engage like 300-400 yards and question what the heck is wrong with my gun. I would literally be that guy. And I'm pretty sure people are watching this video right now, they got their 10-inch or even 16-inch 1 in 7 ARs out there, and they're probably shooting 500, 600 yards with their little long-range ARs of 55 grain, and they're probably questioning what the heck is going on here. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, it also comes into factor. Remember, a lot of people do hand loads. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure that's going to change some factors over here. I mean, you get 77 grain from the factory, people are going to come in argue in the comment section. I already know. Well, I hand load mine at, such and such, and that gives me this. And by all means, knock yourself out. Me, on the other hand, I don't have the time, patience, and or dollars to get into that, but that's a whole nother
Are you telling me not all 77 grains are created equally?
Absolutely not.
But yeah, I mean, so anytime anybody manufactures anything,
Yeah.
right? I mean, there's going to be an element of difference, right? So
match
if you go,
grade,
right? If you go out and you buy a box of 77 grains and you actually pull those projectiles and weigh them, they could be off by multiple grains from one projectile to another. So certainly, there's an element that if you're buying factory loads that is beyond your control. But again, we're dealing with trying to do our best, and so
General consensus is what we're trying to do.
If you are going to go out and you buy your ammunition, then you expect a certain average, and we want that average to be closer to the best performance we can get.
Yeah. So you know what that means?
What?
Out of all the ones on the table,
Yeah.
8.6 black is for me.
What are you gonna do with that thing, dude? Take on T-Rexes?
Everything.
Yeah,
Everything.
that's the yeah. Anyways, that I really would love to check that thing out.
Yeah.
But Matt, you are the man, when it comes to explaining these details. Like I understand. Like seriously, average folk probably very easily understand. So thanks a lot for that. I get it. So faster spin rate, heavier bullets, and slower spin rate, lighter bullets.
Yeah, appreciate the opportunity. Thanks
you.
to Jason for also jumping in with his observations.
Yeah.
Very experienced guy. But guys, if you enjoyed this, please let us know down below. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them down in the comments section. If you have a suggestion for a video you would like to see or a topic you'd like us to cover, we definitely encourage your engagement to let us know. We do try to take that into consideration.
And I'd like to know your experience when it comes to these grain weights, the twist rates, using the wrong and right ammunition, factory load, helm load, hand load. Let us know in the comment section if we didn't cover anything. Let us also learn from you.